Okay, thank y'all all for coming. We're going to have our operations director, Shane KELTON, come up and offer a few words, and then our city manager, Daniel Valenzuela, will offer some thoughts and words following that. So I'll turn it over to Shane.
Thank y'all for coming today and taking the time to learn more about the process that led to city council or led city staff to direct city council to direct city staff to negotiate with Republic Services on contracts for waste collection and for landfill operations. In one regard, it's not surprising that so many people have taken such a great interest in these contracts. Trash pickup is among a core group of city services that often spark much interest and sometimes much passion. What has been surprising is the amount of criticism and misinformed opinions this process has generated. Some have decried the process without yet having seen the proposals, much less the final contracts that process will yield. So in a rather unprecedented move for us, we want to share some of the broad details of the two proposals we received so the public can have a better understanding of and greater confidence in the reasons we are negotiating with Republic. In a nutshell, those reasons are that Republic's proposal offers the greater opportunity to provide the highest level of service at the lowest possible cost to our taxpayers. Legal constrictions prevent us from releasing the two proposals or their details until a contract has been awarded. Frankly, we look forward to doing that so the public can see and know what we have seen and known. Before we touch on the proposal's broader points, it's important to understand how the request for proposals, or RFP, process works. Under state law, municipalities are not required to engage in a competitive process for solid waste services. Had the city wanted to deal exclusively with one hand-picked provider, we could and would have done that. However, we firmly believed a competitive process would yield our end goal, which, again, is the highest level of service at the lowest possible cost to our citizens. So the city issued an RFP that detailed with precision the specifications of the services we were seeking and the proposed terms under which those services would be delivered. That RFP can be viewed in full at cosatx.us/solid waste RFP. The request for proposals was sent to 7 vendors. 2 of those vendors responded with proposals: Republic Services and Texas Disposal Systems, or TDS. A committee of 7 people evaluated each of the proposals. According to the specifications in the RFP, each committee member scored each proposal on a scale of 1 to 100. Had those scores been comparable, the committee could have chosen to engage in 1 or more rounds of interviews with each vendor. In this case, there was a wide gap between those scores. That led the committee, and ultimately the city council, to conclude that the most effective and efficient approach would be to initiate negotiations with the highest scoring vendor, Republic Services. Now let's talk about some of the broader points of the RFP. Beginning with the residential trash pickup. The solid waste services, that's the solid waste service that probably impacts most of the people here in the city of San Angelo. As you know, residential garbage pickup currently occurs twice weekly. Both companies did offer curbside garbage collections once per week and curbside recycling also once per week. Each also proposed using rollout 96-gallon carts, which have been tested in various city neighborhoods around San Angelo, around some San Angelo neighborhoods, and tested very positively. However, only Republic offered a plan to align with the existing recycling collectors the City Council has expressed an interest in partnering, and City Council has expressed an interest in partnering with these enterprises to ensure that they are not put out of business. Also, only Republic agreed to pick up bulk items on a quarterly basis bulk items such as couches, larger items that won't fit in their bins, without defining specific quantities. As to the cost to the customer, Republic offered a far more affordable monthly rate than TDS. TDS's proposed rate was 64% higher than the rate proposed by Republic. That said, it's important to keep in mind that the rates will likely change during negotiations, although not drastically. As for commercial trash pickup, the proposals from the two companies were comparable, with only slight differences, depending on the size of the container and the frequency of service. In the end, after the committee's evaluation of each of the collection proposals, Republic's waste collection proposal scored 247 points higher than TDS's out of a possible 700 points. While trash pickup affects more people in a direct manner, the more obscure operation of the landfill has far-reaching financial implications for our municipal government and its citizens. A municipal landfill is a valuable asset, albeit one that carries with it enormous liabilities. The city's RFP for landfill operations included three key components for which the two proposals differed substantially. Those are: 1, the city sought to protect and indemnify itself from all past, present, and future liabilities associated with the existing landfill. 2, the city was interested in a proposal for the lease and operation of the landfill versus the operational management of the facility. And 3, the city sought compensation for the right to operate its landfill. Only Republic offered a proposal that met all three of those criteria. Republic proposed assuming complete operations in the lease of the existing landfill to include all functions. Republic also offered a 6-figure lease payment. TDS offered no such lease payment on the existing landfill. In addition to annual lease payment, Republic proposed an upfront payment to the city of up to 7 figures, depending on the set of terms that we chose during negotiations. TDS did not provide for such compensation within its proposal. Republic offered to pay for the expansion of the gas wellfield collection system at the existing landfill as necessary and to assume the operation of that wellfield and gas flare. TDS did not make that proposal. One of the most significant factors in the evaluation of the proposal was Republic's willingness to assume all past and future liability associated with the existing landfill. That includes approximately $8.4 million in closure and post-closure liabilities. Republic said it would establish a trust fund in the city's name to alleviate those monetary liabilities. The assumption of such liability would immediately free up some $3.3 million in the city's general fund balance that is currently earmarked for that purpose. That would allow those funds to be used for other pressing city needs. TDS declined to accept any of the liabilities associated with the existing landfill. Rather than crafting a proposal that matched the specifications in the RFP, as Republic did, TDS offered 3 alternatives. The first proposed that TDS would operate the existing landfill without assuming any liabilities. In return, the city would pay TDS the cost of the operation plus 20%. TDS would turn over all receipts to the city. While this proposal might benefit the city financially, there was no way for us to know that based upon the proposal. There are too many unknown variables to verify whether that arrangement would benefit the city. Thus, that uncertainty could pose a significant financial risk to the city and its taxpayers. Secondly, TDS proposed moving to the side of the future landfill. Under that proposal, the city would build the landfill, own the permit, and be responsible for all costs associated with construction and permit requirements. TDS would operate the facility at cost plus 20%. Again, TDS would assume no liability, and the city would indemnify TDS. Under this proposal, the city could lose about 14 years of capacity under the existing landfill's permit if we could find no other operator for it. Also, the city would assume significant financial risk for future liabilities and post-closure costs. Lastly, TDS Alternatively proposed the company obtaining the permit at the new landfill and leasing the property for at least 30 years or the life of the facility. TDS would then assume all liability and responsibility for construction, operation, and closure, and would own the permit. Because TDS would hold the permit, if business relationships with the city disintegrated, there would be some question about the availability of the facility's continued use. And again, we could lose the use of approximately 14 years of capacity at the existing landfill. While Republic was agreeable to the proposed terms in the RFP with no significant changes, TDS proposed changes in its first two options that would place a continuing and increased administrative burden on city staff. Likewise, Republic proposed no exceptions to the RFP specifications. In other words, provided a comprehensive proposal that tightly mirrored the city's request. TDS proposed multiple exceptions to the RFP's specification. Republic also was agreeable to continuing to allow the citizens to dump their large items at the landfill once per month. TDS did not provide a response for this service in its proposal. Republic offered to continue this service up to a certain annual tonnage. With the new quarterly bulk pickup, we do not anticipate reaching that benchmark. Both companies were agreeable to building an estimated $1 million Citizens Convenience Center. This would be a clean, safe surface at which citizens could drop off their trash away from the landfill's working environment. Each company also proposed a good deal of community involvement. One of the most attractive aspects of Republic's proposal is that under it, the city would only collect revenue. With a few possible exceptions, there would be relatively little expense to the city under Republic's proposal. Annual landfill expenses to the city would decrease by approximately 2/3. When the landfill proposals were evaluated by the Solid Waste Committee, their proposal scored 400 points higher out of a possible 700 than did TDS's. Given the disparity of the proposals and the scores, the clear-cut choice in the minds of the Solid Waste Committee and of the City Council was to initiate negotiations with Republic. Those negotiations are continuing as city staff and Republic iron out some of the details and language of an agreement. The members of the City Council have asked that we bring them a proposed contract for their consideration later this month, and we are aiming to do that. With that, I will turn it over to the podium over to City Manager Daniel Valenzuela to offer a few words as well.
Thank you, Shane. Appreciate it. I do want to again thank y'all for being here today. I had prepared a couple of statements. After I make my statements, we'll open up the floor for any questions that you may have. We do definitely look forward to answering those questions. We do realize that you and some members of our community have questions regarding some of the charges commercial customers have paid for trash pickup. Frankly, we have questions as well. Our internal auditor and other members of our city staff have been working very closely with Republic Services to determine the basis for those charges. Because those questions are complex, we are being very methodical in our approach and our research and in ensuring that we are doing our due diligence as well as allowing Republic Services to do their due diligence as well. Once we have a determination, we will report our findings to the members of the City Council for their direction. If the council determines those findings warrant some remedy, that would occur under the terms of the current contract. As for the RFP process, we can honestly say it has yielded exactly what we had hoped it would. That is a competitive process resulting in a provider sharpening its pencils, stepping up, and proposing a package of services, compensation, and pricing that would be far more beneficial to our community than the contract under which we are currently under. As Shane said, much of the negotiations are complete. We look forward to finalizing those soon, presenting an agreement for the City Council's consideration, and possibly executing a contract. Once that is done, we will happily make available both proposals for public viewing. As a reminder, the request for proposals issued by the city is available on our website at cosatx.us/solid waste RFP. And of course, we look forward to providing that higher level of service at a lower cost to our citizens, which has always been and remains the end game of this process. We have been very diligent in our approach. I'm thankful to Shane and Patrick for working on an RFP that will allow us to take a look at what we currently do have. And I will tell you that the contract that we had, even when I first came into the city, took a look at it, I knew there were some shortcomings that we could really make up. I know that we addressed a lot of those shortcomings in submitting that RFP. We definitely wanted to pursue a process that will allow the city to gain the most benefit from the RFP that we sent out. We believe that we did that. We also believe that we acted very professionally. One of the things that is most important to us is to ensure that we do secure the public trust in everything that we do. And also, of course, we're responsible, fiscally responsible to our citizens, and ensuring that we do come up with the best contracts we possibly can as well. So again, we thank you for being here today. With that said, I'll open the floor for any questions that you may have.
What were some of the improvements that you had in this RFP that you were able to add?
Shane spoke about a few of those at this point. A lot of it has to do with, of course, the pricing that we currently want to make sure that we do receive the best value for our customers. As well, when we start looking at closures and post-closures for the landfill, those are liabilities in the future that we'd have to cover. We know that we addressed current, past, current, and even future liability in this agreement, and that's something we definitely wanted to make sure that we did. Again, our whole purpose is to ensure that we do maintain a high level of service at the same time reducing those costs. Yes, sir.
Joe Hyde with St. Angelo Live. If the environmental recovery fee that we've calculated with the school district is 32%, looked at some other invoices that people have shown us, how can this be a fair contract or a fair process or a fair contest if the one of the competitors is charging 32%, whatever that number is, more without the city knowing or regulating it? But it appears to me that the city didn't know that this was happening.
That's a good question. What we're looking at right now is two different contracts. We know that the contract where I mentioned as far as the environmental services you just mentioned is a contract that we're currently under. That is something that we currently want to make sure that it's not a competitive advantage as far as I'm concerned for Republic Services. Regardless of what those findings are, we definitely want to make sure that we remedy if in fact there were some charges that were incorrectly charged to the city, to our commercial customers. We want to make sure that we remedy those. But as far as moving forward and looking at a separate contract, the contract that we're shooting for at this point really doesn't have anything to do with the previous contract. Other than the previous contract, we knew that what we had, we needed to work on because there were some areas where I mentioned a while ago were kind of fell short. We do want to make sure that if, in fact, there were some charges that were charged to our commercial customers that shouldn't have been there, that is remedied right away.
If you didn't know they were charging it before the contract signed, is there remedies that you've negotiated into the new contract that you're now doing that will prevent them from charging those environmental recovery?
We were very specific when this RFP went out as far as what we're looking for. Exactly the fees that we're looking for that were allowable by the city. We definitely want to make sure that moving forward that we're watching that very closely. And again, a lot of that was built into the RFP and the requests for proposals and the proposals we got in, a lot of that was addressed. And again, as I mentioned a while ago, I think Shane and Patrick did a pretty good job of ensuring that.
So at the end of this, the commercial bill, if someone's looking at their commercial bill, their restaurant down on Chadbourne, for example, they're going to look at their commercial bill, it's going to go down 32%.
At the conclusion of as far as the review that we're doing at this point, with Republic on the current contract, not the future contract, the one that, as far as the proposal that is being negotiated. Once that review is concluded and we determine that there was fees that weren't charged, we're going to pursue that. We want to make sure that any commercial accounts that paid more than it's due, that they're compensated for that.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question. At the Shane, you told me back in November, and if I'm misquoting you, let me know, You said, I mean, and you're kind of alluding to it, that, you know, this thing's been going on for years and years and years without doing a review, which you finally done a review of. And there are costs or fees that may have been charged that you're not really sure of. You know, basically the system there and what people are getting charged is unknown. And the TDS rep has told me that there's environmental fees charged on the tonnage being dumped into the city that was supposed to be the city's money that the city doesn't have. So if that's true, is it true in the fact that Republic is using the city's money to buy the contract? Does that make sense?
I understand what you're saying there, but as we move forward looking at it, we're going to, we would treat, and if these charges, after all the due diligence from both parties are found that these charges did occur, remedies would have to be made based on the old contract, not the new contract. I can't speak to what monies Republic is using as they move forward with the new proposal and the new contract negotiations.
As a city manager, does it make you feel uncomfortable with all these open questions about the previous contract to go, you know, and what many citizens are saying, like we just did a thing with a guy from Charles Young saying, you know, and Paul Alexander are saying you're rushing to judgment or rushing to a decision on this. But then you have all these open questions that are coming out from the past. Does it make you uncomfortable going, you know, basically jumping into bed with the same person you were in with for 37 years and you're being mistreated by?
No, that's actually a fair question, absolutely. I know that we always want to make sure that in our dealings that we work with companies and individuals, you know, that are going to treat us fairly, of course. But as far as moving forward, all I can tell you is just in the RFP process and what we reviewed, you know, was so evident that one really came to play. And we received a very good proposal. We know that what that could mean for our citizens moving forward, you know, the implication that could have for our citizens moving forward. But I do understand also that, again, there is an agreement that we had previously that we need to make sure that that agreement was followed. As far as moving forward, all I can tell you is that we have two agreements. What will be presented to the City Council will be the findings as far as the determination, what came from the investigation, and get their direction and see what they want to do. All we're doing at this point as a staff is looking at the two proposals that came in. And we're moving forward based on the grading system of those two different proposals, based on what we felt would be best for our citizens. And that's what we're doing. We'll allow for the council to review our findings on the previous contract and make a determination. And who knows what they decide moving forward. It may be, yes, we definitely want to secure this agreement because it is definitely beneficial to our community, or it may be no. We don't know at this point. All we know is that we're going to move forward with our negotiations.
And how is the city going to prevent something like this happening in the future if, again, a contract is pursued?
We currently do have, of course, an internal auditor, a position actually that we actually developed about 6 months ago. And specific to certain contracts that we're taking a review, we're trying to make sure that some of the contracts, especially some of our bigger contracts, are reviewed on a regular basis to ensure that there is the agreement is being followed. So again, we're taking action on our part with city staff as well to make sure that those numbers are being reviewed by a person that is dedicated to do that as well.
And is the investigation going to continue while you're pursuing the other contract, or are you going to hold pursuing the contract and just kind of finish it?
We're moving together simultaneously. You know, if, as mentioned a while ago, if at one point the council decides that no, we don't want to work with this group any longer based on findings, and that's the city council's direction. But at this point, we're doing our due diligence in both aspects. Of course, we're moving forward with a contract that has been proposed, or not a contract, but a proposal. And at the same time, we're also reviewing what we had previously to ensure that we weren't overcharged, or those commercial customers weren't overcharged, and if they were, to ensure that we do everything we possibly can that they get that money back.
And so far, I'm guessing you're just kind of starting the investigation, nowhere near finishing it up right now. But how many years has the possible overcharges been happening?
We're looking back, and Shane, as far as the number of years we're looking at, we're going as far back as we possibly can to see when those environmental fees were actually implemented. So we'll go back and review all those. Again, it is a complex matter because we have a lot of those fees to review. We have a lot of determination as far as some of the decisions that were made in the past. You know, how did that play into those fees being charged? So we're looking at everything at this point, but we definitely want to make sure that we have a decision as far as the investigation completed prior to making a recommendation to the city council.
So am I hearing you say it's possible that throughout the whole 37 years that this is?
No, not the 37 years. Going back, what is it, Shane?
We have narrowed the search back down to searching real hard between the time frame of 03 to 06, 07 is the time frame that I believe the auditor is really concentrating on reviewing all city council minutes, reviewing all records that we have relating to that matter from that time period, is to try to narrow down any actions that may have occurred in that time frame that may have caused something to occur at that point.
And is it possible it's hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars?
We will determine that. Again, I'd hate to venture to guess as far as what that dollar amount would be. I want to make sure that we know exactly what that amount would be if it is determined that in fact that is something that was overcharged by Republic. Again, as we mentioned a while ago, we want to make sure that we allow them their due diligence. We're doing our due diligence and working with them as well. And we want to definitely make sure that if there is an amount that was overcharged, we want to make sure we recoup all of it. So again, that in itself is a separate part of what we've been working with. So it's been for us, it's been complex because it's not just one issue we're dealing with. We also have an issue where we know, and just by what was presented to you a little while ago, that we had two proposals that came in. And from the two proposals that came in, it was very evident who really provided the best proposal to the city, at the best savings to our citizens as well. And we want to make sure that we take a look not just the past, but really right now the current, what we're working on and moving forward into the future to ensure the best possible value for our citizens. So again, it's two different issues that we definitely will be working very diligently to make sure that we resolve.
And in Tuesday's council meeting, should we expect to hear anything on this?
No, possibly not by Tuesday's council meeting, but we're definitely looking at within the next couple of weeks that we'll have a very a final answer, really, to be honest with you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
In the committee that was evaluating the RFPs, Charles Young said that there was several variations on a theme, a lot of combinations between how you do the landfill and how you do the trash pickup. And you mentioned something about public trust. Do you think that the short amount of time it took you to evaluate both RFPs fosters a good intent on public trust?
I can tell you that a lot of work went into the RFP. I think that there was a thorough understanding as far as what went out. Again, as I mentioned, Shane and Patrick a while ago, they really, sharpened their pencils and came up with a proposal that we thought was most beneficial to the city if we could get everything that we're looking for. I know that it seems like the time frame was very short. I can tell you that a lot of us worked through the weekend. We spent a lot of time making sure that we covered the material that we had presented before us. And I can assure you that city staff was very thorough in the evaluation that we did. Council as well, and even I mentioned during the city council meeting, as I walked into the meeting, I was very pleased to see that a lot of those proposals the council was holding were highlighted with notes on the side, with a lot of questions that were asked during that meeting that we had. I think that there were a lot of good questions that were asked, and we were actually quite pleased as a staff that they were very cautious in their approach and looking at everything that they thought they understood, and asked a lot of questions of us as well. We as a staff, all we're looking for is the best value. That was it.
One follow-on?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Daniel, isn't it correct that if the city finds out that it has to recover a substantial amount of money from Republic, it'll be easier to recover that money if the city continues to have a contractual relationship with them
Well, well, so, as far as that part of it, I will say that Republic has worked really well with us. They have mentioned that they definitely want to do everything they can, to remedy if there's some wrong there, that they definitely would take ownership of it, and they will work with us to make sure that they remedy that situation. And that's in the terms, that's the previous contract. So regardless, we would pursue it, if even we went with a different waste management company. But I know that they've been working very diligently with us in addressing all the questions that we've had, and again, providing information that we're looking for. And still, the information that we're looking for, they're still pulling some other information for us. But at this point, I will tell you that they worked very well with us, and again, have said that they definitely want to take ownership of any wrongdoing or anything that was handled incorrectly. They want to make sure that they remedy that as well.
Are you working directly with the local representatives of the Republic, or are you working with their corporate employees?
Both, actually. We've been working with both, especially on the issue of the previous contract. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Daniel, you took great pains to talk about how specific this new contract's going to be and how closely you're going to watch rates and that sort of thing. Are you implying that the last contract was poorly or vaguely written, or that Republic just chose to ignore the specifics of that contract?
We have a responsibility as a city to ensure that any contract that we go into, that we look at it very carefully, to make sure that the contract is beneficial to the city. I'm not going to sit here and cast stones at whomever agreed to the previous contract, but I will tell you that any entity that comes in to negotiate, they're going to try to do the best they can for their organization. And in this instance, I know that Republic did their part as far as securing a contract for them, but I think that with the city, we could have done a lot more. And again, as I came in and met with Shane and we talked more about the contract, there was several areas that we felt that we needed to shore up, that we need to make sure that we address, to make sure that we definitely did have a contract that it was beneficial to the community instead of the other way around.
So this will be less vague than the last one?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
It was my understanding in the November council meeting, the discussion when the RFP was agreed to, that one of the options was going on a month-to-month when this contract expired through the remainder of this year. My question is that still an option? And wouldn't it be more wise to exercise that option rather than rush into a contract with someone you think may or may not have ignored the terms of the last contract? It's the same company.
Yeah, as I mentioned a while ago, we want to make sure that we have those questions answered before we make a recommendation to the city council as far as what we would like to, as far as staff's recommendation on what we've negotiated. We want to make sure that we have all those facts straight. No, there's an option for month to month, absolutely. That's something that it could be.
Our current contract with Republic Services does not allow for an automatic month-to-month renewal or option on it. We would have to negotiate a month-to-month operational contract if we so choose to do that. We do not automatically have that option available to us with the existing contract. In our existing contract, we had an automatic renewal option for an additional 5 years, not to operate under the existing contract, not a month-to-month contract.
Okay, I'll let the full minutes of the meeting, because I don't recall that as...
That was mentioned at the meeting. I remember saying, somebody asked something about the
Somebody asked if
month-to-month.
we could, and we can negotiate a month-to-month. We can negotiate that, but it would be a negotiated month-to-month contract, where it would have to be a negotiated extension of our existing contract for a month-to-month. It's not, there's not an automatic provision in our contract for that.
But I do understand the question, though. We do want to make sure that we have that point answered before we move forward with our recommendation. So again, that's really important for us as well.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions? Well, we thank y'all for being here today. If y'all have any questions that maybe y'all didn't have today that you can think of, feel free to contact us. We'll be happy to answer those for you. Thank you and have a blessed day.